Suchita Dalal. She is a household name now. I'm sure you must have seen the Harshad Mehta series. Yes, she's the same lady who busted this whole Harshad Mehta scam. Friends, I got an opportunity to interact with her today, and what a lovely interactions I had with her. She candidly spoke a lot about behind the scenes of financial markets in India. She talked about exchange, regulator, FIIs, and so many topics which I think is so relevant for all of us to know about. If you are an investor in Indian stock market, this is a video which you have to see and you have to learn a lot because she brings with herself tremendous experience of knowing this market. I hope you enjoy this interaction. It's going to be fun interaction as well as some serious stuff we have discussed. I hope you're going to share this interaction with your friends and family as well. Good evening, ma'am. It's such a pleasure to interact with you, and I'm already having goosebumps when I'm talking to you. And your smile is making my life so easy that yes, I can ask all dil se questions to you. Thank
Cer-
you.
Certainly good to be here, and certainly let's have a frank discussion.
Fantastic, ma'am. You have seen uh, so many things. Been there, done that, and I can talk to you about a lot of things in different tangent. But ma'am, because my learners are largely retail investors, and there are so many people who have come, so I want to represent a retail investor, and I want to talk to few. I talk to you about few things which area of concern for me, which I want to get a kind of a comfort from you that is this the right market which we are into, not in terms of market direction but in terms of market ecosystem, the structure of the market, how market is planning, how things are evolving. So there will be some questions which I believe you will be the right person to answer this question because you have seen so many things related to this market.
I'll try my best.
Great. Now, my first question, discussion point is that you have seen this ecosystem which has evolved where so many parties are there in this ecosystem, the regulator, the exchange, the intermediaries, and the forms of all the parties is changing, particularly in this new world dominated by technology. So do you feel inside something has changed or you see the same wine in a new bottle? Do you see any change which has happened in India?
So, when you say change, I mean, how far back are we going, right? So, I started covering the market around 1984, 85 when I came into journalism. So, we talking about a phase till say 2000. So, I think we should ignore that. Let's talk
Yeah.
about this century, okay?
Yeah.
But the big changes that happened really were still last century from 92, or 91, 92. First, economic reforms, then, the big scam in the market, which led to SEBI being formed. And then you have from 2000, which like a turning point of the dot-com boom, you've
Mm.
had, what you're talking about, technology coming in and how it changes things. And there's a sea change. I mean, it's dramatic. There is no doubt at all.
Mm.
So when we talk about retail investors, since that's a concern, what I keep saying is that there were active retail investors in the market in the 80s, okay?
Mm.
Because
Mm.
there were a lot of good things happening. So there was, Ferra dilution. Then there was this whole growth of Reliance, which created an equity cult. And people were coming into the market. The government was there. So
Mm.
there was control over capital issues. So you could
Mm.
make issues only at a certain price point. So things were sort of safe and taken care of by my Bap Sarkar. Okay. What happened post economic reforms is that overnight, with the one line, control over capital issues was struck off.
Right.
And what I find extraordinary is 35 years later, if you're, we can discuss it separately as primary market, secondary market, then all the retail algos and whatever, which is a new part. But since we are back in an IPO boom just now, let's just talk about that.
Mm.
So if you look at that alone, valuations, the minute you had Paytm crash, people are sort of going back and crying and saying, "Arey, where is CCI? What is SEBI doing? SEBI should have looked at the price."
Mm.
So, to someone like me who's watching it for 35 years, it was a little astonishing that, so much of effort, including people like me, have been writing about it to say, please understand what is a disclosure based market. and the dangers of it. It's not simple. Disclosure based market is very dangerous because people till today don't know that SEBI as a regulator takes zero responsibility for an IPO. So when it happened in 92, there was a sense of shock. Okay, so we had this big what we called IPO mania. So in 1 week, in one particular week, which was the peak and the worst, 74 IPOs opened, right?
Oh God.
And after that, companies took investors' money and vanished. So for 1 decade, the primary market was dead. And you had investment bankers who are back again today, back handling the same issues. I remember one particular, industry meeting where well-known investment banker actually apologized and said, we are at fault. We should not have allowed this kind of rampant greed, and we should have been more careful about the kind of issues that came. So today, it's not those kind of issues. There are no fly-by-night operators because SEBI is looking at that part. So you won't have, a company which is sitting in a shed somewhere where, project reports were being sold. You just had to change the names on the computer and they were pretending. It's not as bad as that. But valuations is still an issue. The fact that companies coming out with a public issue just for the original investors to make an exit and become billionaires, right? And we are the ones who are giving them an exit. What astonishes me is that even today, people have not even looked at these basics. That SEBI does not look at valuation. SEBI doesn't care who comes to the market as long as there is a disclosure. Okay, so I can say, yes, I've spent 10 years in jail because I murdered 5 people, but I'm out of it. I did my punishment. Then I cheated 5 others. I was punished for it. As long as you have disclosed everything, there is nothing in SEBI rules which say that you can't come to the market if somebody wants to subscribe to you. And this is a global phenomenon. It's not Indian. We have borrowed disclosure-based regulation in India. And I think investors need to understand that first. And that, to my mind, when you say, is there a sea change? Yes. But do things still remain the same? Yes, they do. Because people are not reading, right?
Yeah.
For primary market alone. I think the same would apply to secondary market. We'll discuss it as we go along.
Yeah. So, ma'am, you see the regulator also keeps on changing. And I've seen every 4 years, 5 years, some major change which comes from the regulator and the market microstructure changes. So the IPO thing which is happening is obviously the result of that goalpost shift where they have allowed loss-making entities to come out and do an IPO, which is pretty much prevalent in some developed nations like US, which is a very good example for all of us. So you think there was a need of this? Because ultimately a retail investor is not able to understand the concept of valuation of these loss-making enterprises, which probably a matured investors like a VC or a private equity guy or a merchant banker, so-called, they are able to understand. So do you think this probably could have been avoided?
Okay, so what happens, again, something which I've been saying for 2 decades, I spent almost 10 years on SEBI's Primary Market Advisory Committee, okay? And one of the things that we used to keep saying very strongly at that time is, please don't borrow all the rules from the US, right? So even in an IPO, this fact that the merchant banker decides who will get the allocation, India doesn't do it. I think that happened when, in the time when I was there on the SEBI Primary Market Committee. Slowly, SEBI has taken out all investor associations from the advisory committees. So one of the things that I want to stress on is the number of investors may have increased. First of all, look at the trajectory of investors, okay? So around the 80s and 90s, there were 2 crore investors in the market, and this included Unit Trust of India and the investors in mutual funds. After that, this whole IPO mania happened of the early 90s, then the scam, and the number of investors actually dwindled. It had gone down as low as 80 lakhs. Okay, the committee report says it went down as much as 80 lakhs. Now, when you look at it from March 2020, just in FY21, we have 1.42 crore new investors coming into the market. This is mind-boggling and path-breaking. Okay, I mean, we are talking about 1.42 crores as of March. We are now in December. So I wouldn't be surprised if our investor population has actually doubled in the last 2 years alone post-pandemic.
Right.
These are completely new people. And I think I would like to address them and say that you are new to the market. Please make sure your voice is heard. Because the question that you asked ultimately boils down to that. Do we have any say in the rules that are framed for us? Zero. Okay. The Securities and Exchange Board of India, the Finance Ministry, the Standing Committee on Finance, they do not even think it is necessary to talk to any investor representatives. They only talk to intermediaries. Yesterday, SEBI set up a committee, which is again under a former whole-time member, which is their own ecosystem. All their intermediaries of every kind, including an ex-Carvey company, other intermediaries who supply data, not a single investor representative. And I don't mean a journalist or a writer. Okay, they don't represent investors, as in they may write their views, they're not fighting your case, they're not lobbying for investor issues. And I mean, I've had my time on the committee, so I don't even want to go there. So I'm not saying it from that perspective, but there are good investor associations, some of them very vocal, who have done work. You have to be there. Why shouldn't your voice be heard? So the question that you asked, why are loss-making IPOs coming? Now, in the dot-com bubble, exactly this had happened. There was a bubble building up. One of the things that the dot-com company said, because they wanted an exit, they wanted to list, people who invested them wanted to get out. They said, oh, you should allow us to dilute very little. Okay, because all these super billionaires want to sell maybe 20 shares and buy a house because they want those kind of valuations. They want that low of floating stock so that they, remain rich forever. I'm sorry, it sounds very blunt. And India agreed. So today we keep paying lip service to floating stock being 25%. Where is the floating stock? You diluted it in the turn of the century to allow dot-com companies to get listed. You brought it down to 10%. Never going back. Now, this is a new bubble. I won't say it's a bubble. This is a new fierce bull market. Okay. So I scratched the bubble. I'm not saying it's a bubble. But in this bull market, they have lobbied and they have ensured that loss-making companies come because there is an Amazon, there is, Elon Musk or whatever else. The point is, are Indian investors and the Indian situation the same? Who would answer that question? We, the investors, okay? Because we know what is the level of literacy. We know how people are led up. We know more than anything else that there is zero grievance redress. Okay, in all computerized systems, 90% works well. You can say 85% works well. So we all go rara and say majority has no problem. But until you're a victim, and we have set up Money Life Foundation and it's now 12 years old. So we only meet the victims, right? When things go wrong, we know the nightmare that people go through. You realize the judicial system doesn't work. Regulators give a damn. You can talk about scores, try filing something. I mean, one simple example that when I'm talking about this ferocious bull market and the number of new investors coming into the market, you had 25, 26 brokers who have collapsed on the National Stock Exchange. Right? I don't think even in 92, when we decimated the BSE, when we removed brokers from the governing board, when we said, you guys are not capable, you'll interfere, we are going to put a professional management. Even at that time, we did not have 23 broker defaults. So today you have so many broker defaults on your monopoly exchange. And where is the noise from anybody? I mean, those investors are not a small number, okay? There are tens of lakhs of investors. They're in lakhs. Carvey alone, how many investors have suffered. They are shouting, they're screaming, they're getting together and going to court. Who's listening to them? How many members of parliament have made a noise in parliament about this issue? If 92 May, George Fernandez and others hadn't spoken and shouted in the market, you think they would have gone after any investigation with the scam? Who's speaking for us? And why is it that if we are, I'm putting me along with all the investors, if investors are so powerful, they have so much money, there are so many in number, why don't they have a voice? Something that people have to think about.
So, ma'am, see, I'm as an investor, when I'm seeing that, yes, there are loopholes in the system. There are way things are happening. So if suppose I have to protect myself, so considering this IPO boom which is happening, so what you are trying to suggest that you please know what you are getting into. You read the documents, you read the prospectus which the company is filing, and then only you invest in those loss-making IPOs or any IPO for that matter. You can't blame, eventually you are saying to an investor that don't blame the ecosystem later that they have done this, they have done that, because after all, you are the one who is responsible for your own money.
So I would say, not only do I agree with you, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying in a nutshell, but I'm also saying just think about it for a minute, okay, and parse what the IPO is. So first of all, forget about what the details and the valuation and all this. They're these so-called big startups, okay, they have done 3-4 rounds of funding, and they are now come to the final stage when they want to get listed and dump it on retail investors, right? So at least start with the awareness that you're the last in the chain and you're buying it at the highest level.
Okay.
The decision that you have to make is it still worth it? Is it going to go higher up? If it was going to go up that much, would these guys have exited? I mean, yeah, sure, they may exit and try and find the new Zomato or the new Nykaa. So maybe they are. That's a call you have to make. So that's a first analysis. The second is who's going to tell you. So I started with SEBI. SEBI is not looking at valuations. So it's out of the picture. SEBI is not bothered, right? Because that's not its mandate. It's got a disclaimer on the front page of the prospectus. Investment bankers, they're supposed to certify the facts in the IPO. Okay. They are looking for dhanda, which is they want business. They will chase after everybody and they get the mandate based on the fact that they can encourage you. So if you are the promoter, if I am an investment banker, you will choose me as an investment banker because I tell you, you can get a valuation of say 20,000 per share, while somebody else may have said 18, another would have said 15. So most of the time, the choice is based, if it's a larger issue, how many IPOs have you handled? And B, what is it that you're promising I can get? So we are only looking at that. Paytm, the controversy about whether something should have been left for investors on the table. Now, the irony is I've seen multiple IPO booms and busts. At the end of the day, this whole regret that, we should have left something on the table for investors, we should not have overpriced, is always after a fall. Never before. Before, it's only greed of the investment banker to get the mandate, greed of the promoter to get the best possible price, and of course, few IPOs which initially do very well, which sort of lure investors. So it is our job to look at what factors are you coming from? So for a long time, at least in Money Life, we used to say that there is always an opportunity to buy a company without the IPO. There is too much noise during an IPO. Everybody is out to sell. You're not missing any boat or any bus permanently by not doing it. So if you're not sure, just wait it out. Let it get listed. Maybe when it comes down, you can pick it up and it'll come down sometime. No market just keeps going vertically up, right?
Sure. So, ma'am, in the today's age of social media and so many influencers around, and somehow that whole thought process in India where people love to follow individuals who make sense. So after a point of time, you have YouTube, you have Twitter, and I mean, we all are party to this. Even I have followers. But finally, people in India are the ones who are seekers. Most of the people, I would say. Very few people are the ones who are like analyzing on their own and doing it the way they want it to be. Most of the people are seekers. So in today's world of social media and influencers, don't you think IPO and other, it's not just IPO actually, if you see on Telegram channel and so many social media platforms and hidden ones, which a lot of people don't know, there has been a major shift in dominance of the social media platform in decision making for an investor?
Again, see, I keep saying a fool and his money. Okay, soon parted. The question is, are you discerning or are you not discerning? So one of the things that, in fact, Devashish and I keep saying a lot of times is that, strangely enough, on social media, there are lots of good people also. Someone like you who wants people to do the right thing, right? So there are lots of people who are sitting there and doing research and analysis and putting it out even free, right? Even our website, 90% of it is free.
Hmm.
And it is not that we don't get offers every single day to promote something, to get kickbacks for brokerage platforms and whatever. We are saying no. So the point is that you decide who you want to follow and who you want to get carried away by. So that's one part. The more worrying part is this, which is that every company has appointed a team. So part of public relations and the PR agency that you handle is your digital media management and image management. And the way it works is that A, put out wrong information through third party sources, which are not traced back to the company, gaslight people. So if somebody is, revealing something, you go and start attacking them. Then you change the narrative. So if somebody is pointing to flaws, so maybe a company which never talks to investors, A, file a defamation against somebody who speaks out so that you silence them. B, have your paid influencers. You'll find it's very easy to figure them out also. They'll have a proper name, but zero biodata. They will not say who they are. Okay, so these are all anonymous with some name handles who will come there and say, oh, you must be paid. Oh, you probably have a problem. Or did you short sell? Did you do something else? So this noise is far more difficult for people to understand and parse. And I think it's important for a serious investor who comes into the market to quickly start taking a look at what's going on and block the noise. Okay. Because there's no doubt you're going to get influenced. That's how influence works, which is why influencers get paid, right? So if you do not want to get influenced by the wrong things, you better start blocking them. There is no other remedy for it.
Got it, ma'am.
Especially if you're going to trade on the basis of, the noise that keeps coming to you on WhatsApp and Telegram.
Yeah, it's crazy out there, ma'am. Trust me. I mean, the way WhatsApp and Telegram, I remember seeing a Telegram group with 6 lakh people. And the gentleman who is an admin of the group, he was talking about a stock that the stock will go up by 2%, 3% with a stop loss of 1%. And I said that, buddy, you have 6 lakh followers. Even if you tell one stock name, that stock will anyways go up by 10%. And you will claim that, I'm successful because this is my call. It's not your call. People followed you and they bought it. And no one is looking after these things. In fact, ma'am, I recorded a video on this, a fraud around Telegram, which is happening. And, I got a call from someone I know in SEBI from old times. And he said that SEBI has seen your video and they've started thinking about how to control these Telegram, etc., which is such an open platform. It's so difficult to manage them, control them.
I disagree with the difficult to manage them and control them. SEBI spends so much of money on software. Okay. I mean, I'm talking about a situation that's 10, 12 years old, where they spent over 20 crore. Then they, change that and they say they've got a better software and which has heat maps, which throws out red flags each time something just goes up. When they want to, they're able to go after people. I think the problem with SEBI is that it can't make up its mind between what is essential to check, what is the speed with which it should act on things that are essential, and what is, trivial number bean counter stuff that they do for violations, which can actually wait. Some procedural stuff on which an adjudicating officer will write long thesis and, punish someone for 2 lakhs and 3 lakhs, which is so corny, because that's taking you so much of time. While if you wake up 3 years later and you say something that happened 3 years, you look at every adjudication order of SEBI, it is so bloody old. So if you don't do it fast, and the other thing that SEBI used to do is do a shortcut and issue interim orders. I think people got tired of that because interim orders means SEBI is not taking any responsibility, but it can shut down your business and it can destroy you. So obviously, a lot of these things got challenged. But my point is, you have the technology, you can use speed. The other thing about a regulator is that it should create fear, okay? Instead of reeking of corruption, which happens a lot with SEBI. If there is somebody in SEBI who picks up the phone and says, I'm watching your group, or just calls the admin, okay? I mean, from my personal experience, know that most of these admins are gutless people If they know there is a call from the regulator saying, we are watching what you've said, give me all your data, he'll probably shut down that channel tomorrow. Doesn't matter that he has 6 lakh people. Okay. Why is the regulator not doing this proactively? You don't even have to, you just have to say, I'm concerned at this. So if they've heard you, for instance, and you're a credible source, pick up the phone and tell them, I'm looking at your data. Send me this information today. Yes, it'll take you time to analyze. But this call from the regulator in time, right then, believe me, half these guys, I know so many people who, they write whatever they want to. Today, one of the things about social media is what I call casual defamation. You can say anything about anybody because, you can't go after every single person and file criminal cases and defamation against them. No human being can possibly do that. You just have to suffer it and let it go. So the minute there is a defamation notice against somebody, they are so ready to apologize. I have even seen people who are correct and are willing to apologize because there is problem nahi chahiye.
Right.
So why isn't the regulator using its power of moral suasion? You have the force with you, right? SEBI is on paper more powerful than the SEC. We are handicapped by a slow legal system. That handicap is for us as investors. When SEBI does not act, or when I want to go after somebody who has taken me for a ride, then that becomes a problem for me as an individual. For the regulator, it's sitting on my money. It's publicly funded. What stops them from making that call to say, I'm watching you?
So, ma'am, as an individual investor, it's very difficult to raise such a strong opinion in any platform because, typical individual is with a capital of 1 lakh, 2 lakh. And right now, there is just one focus, how to generate more wealth out of this, because everyone around you is creating so much money. So everyone is just participating in the market because they find opportunities to make money. So how do I handle that? I can only be careful about what I'm doing. What others are doing is obviously something which is beyond my control, very honestly.
So honestly, there is no answer. Okay, I've just many of these cycles, and there have been various times in my life when I, as a journalist, constantly used to feel, oh my God, I don't know enough. We're reading 7 papers in the morning. We still feel we missed this or missed that. Okay, and I used to meet friends who have not even studied anything to do with business or finance, and I say, what have you been doing? I met one friend after 9 years during a previous bull market, and I say, what do you do? Oh, I trade. I said, really? And yeah, I do day trading.
Yeah.
I was thunderstruck. I heard another one last week, a visualizer, advertising. What does she do these days? She trades derivatives.
Oh.
So, this is a clear sign that we've reached a peak where people don't feel that they need to know anything. They've got an app, they've got some algorithm, and they're trading derivatives. They don't need to know. And this cycle we have seen so many times. I had a lady come to me saying, I lost money on oil futures. Okay. And she was at that time 70 plus. She put the capital gains by selling a flat into oil futures. And I said, how on earth did you put money? I said, you're asking me to help. I know nothing about oil futures. I wouldn't touch them. And in fact, I don't know enough of people who invest in commodity futures because they don't understand how it fluctuates, who influences the price, the global thing. And her answer was, nahi, wo ek banda tha, he came to us and he says, auntie, main sab kar lunga aapke liye. And aapko kuch nahi karna hai. And he used to call me every day and he says, auntie, aapne itna paisa banaya, utna paisa banaya. Then one fine day he stopped calling. And, I said, did you look at any documents? Did he give you anything? He says, हाँ, वो कुछ भेजता था. He told me, auntie, आपको कुछ नहीं करना है. At the end of the year, ये आपके CA को देना है. And forget capital gains, you'll have money to buy 3 flats.
Okay? Oh my God.
And suddenly one day he stopped calling. And then when it was time to pay her taxes, when the CA said, give me the data, she tried to contact him. He's not contactable. And she found a huge loss of several lakhs in her book. Forget about capital gains being saved. She had lost 3 times the money. This story is going to be repeated again and again and again, and you can't stop it. Okay. When I talk about 23 brokers who have defaulted, some of them were very angry with me because I said, you invested in a Ponzi scheme. And the broker was running a Ponzi scheme. People invested in the market. Now, when you talk about financial literacy, what is the job of a broker? It is to put through your transaction. That's it. If he also advises you, which SEBI allows a broker to do, that's the maximum he can do. Saying, okay, buy this, or I think that has got heated, sell it out of the goodness of his heart. Okay. That's again not his job. If you give your money to a broker, to 1 crore of rupees, and you tell me that's your retirement saving, because he promised you a 40% return and he's giving you or 12% monthly, what are you investing in? That means, have you even gone to a dictionary and seen what is the meaning of a broker? Isn't that the least that you're supposed to do? Okay, then you have lost the money. Now, my point is that, you are looking for who to blame. You're looking for someone to help you to recover the money. Is the exchange without guilt? No. Exchange is also at fault because the exchange, in this case, the National Stock Exchange, every time that broker was recording, 2000% increase in turnover, instead of saying, what is this wonderful stuff that you're doing that people are flocking to you and giving you so much money, they are supposed to do annual inspections. What did you find? You found a reason to celebrate. You sent a congratulatory letter. Now, it's not that an investor deserves to get the full money back, but the exchange was at fault. The exchange should have red flagged it. The exchange should have caught it in time and warned people. So exchange has failed. The exchange is phenomenally profitable. It has an investor fund. So you have a right to get that money. Question is, who's going to bridge this gap? You have to go to court. That costs money. Court cases in India go on for 15 years. If at all you're lucky and you get 50% of your money back, what is the value of money? Money is fungible. What is the value of that money 15 years down the line, right? I think investors have to think about this. And, if I have one message that I want to keep repeatedly saying is that don't think everything ends at investing. You have to get a voice. If you have money to spare, you are the smart, powerful person, you're going and voting, you have put a representative in parliament, you have to be able to say, are you asking questions? Why is it that we don't have Senate hearings kind of thing happening in public where on Rajya Sabha TV, I can see 4 or 5 smart members of parliament calling SEBI, calling NSE and saying, why do you have 25, 26 broker defaults in 1 year? That too in the middle of a pandemic. Have you been doing your job? Let me hear the answers. But will someone ask them? As an investor, do you know what has happened? You have no right to know, isn't it? So I feel that along with your investment, please be aware that you have to be conscious about redress and about, fairness, equity, and having a voice. And you have to work at it. You have to spend at least half an hour of your time every week worrying about this.
True, ma'am. Ma'am, in that sense, I think social media has given some ray of hope because, every time there is some problem which crops up for whatever reason, people have learned the habit of tagging the regulator, tagging the right people, and it then becomes a kind of a revolution. But obviously, SEBI doesn't act on all kind of, Twitter tags, but at least that habit of sounding out to right people, right platform, at least that is coming on board. Do you?
No. See, I'll tell you what, you're right at one level. Okay. Yes, tagging and froth. Okay. So this issue has agitated people, will come into the public domain. But make a list. Okay. I mean, just out of curiosity, make a list of how many issues made a noise. How many of them were, first of all, correct? Okay. So for instance, somebody goes and trades in that Uttam Galva steel without knowing the shares are going to be extinguished. And then you're making a noise. That's a pointless noise. You should have, done some homework. You should at least know enough about bankruptcy to know it is up to the person who is taking over the company to decide whether they want to extinguish shares or not. Now, if you don't know it and you make a noise, it's of no use. But, at the end of the day, no noise matters unless it, pinches. And today, we investors are not a vote bank. Okay. So it does not pinch any market regulator, intermediary, or member of parliament. So once in a while, they may sympathize with you, say something, retweet. It has no meaning. Ultimately, the issues have to be documented. And again, we run an NGO. This is what we find on issues that are genuine also, whether it is banks who suddenly overnight close down your account and don't allow you to transact because of KYC. Many people lost money in the market because they just could trade. The bank had just shut down their account, which is linked to their demat. Okay. So look at how crippling it is. Not enough that you don't have access to money, but you have certain payments coming up overnight without warning. Your account is closed. You can't make your, T+2 whatever payment that has to go out of your account. So even in cases like this, there are people like us who will fight. But if we have the right data, which is verified. Now, unfortunately, the flip side of all this noise is earlier when I was on Twitter, when something sounds genuine, I used to retweet. I have a sizable following, so I used to retweet it. After a while, I found that even fairly credible people who I know do not put all the facts, or the noise that they're making is not based on the truth. So I don't retweet anymore unless I'm 100% sure. So you cannot, this whole thing about I will tweet and uska asar ho jayega is not going to happen. Slowly it's going to die out because of all the negatives of social media. You will have to document. You'll have to make the effort of putting down what your experience was, what the problem was, whether it's a NSE glitch, a trading glitch, something else. You will have to send it to someone. It'll have to be collated. You'll have to show that this didn't affect one person who manages to make a noise and tweet 500,000 times, tagging enormous number of people, and that's why it's getting retweeted. It's a genuine issue that has affected maybe 1,000, 2,000 people. That documentation has to be done for things to be effective. So even if you can't fight, the least you'll have to do is spend that time documenting it and sending it to someone who's likely. It's not that, we as an NGO, which has got very low funding, can take on all the issues on earth. We also have to be selective. We take issues that hurt the maximum people. But we need documentation. We need evidence. Otherwise, you can't fight.
True. Ma'am, let me just change the tangent a bit and talk about the thing which you have been very closely associated with is the news and the updates and other things which is related to the market or the business correspondent side. So, ma'am, the news which was there 20 years ago, 15 years ago, had some impact value in the market. And today there is an abundant source of news and so much news floating around without much credibility. Under that scenario, how does current investor filter the news? I mean, do you agree to that the news volume and depth has gone up, which is actually making very difficult for a layman to understand the impact of the news on the market?
So let's segregate this into three things, okay? One is just information. Right? So for instance, when I started in the market, even the stock prices were not easily known. Trading was a short window. You had to wait for the Bhav copy to come from the BSE. Most of the time, you could actually see the final closing price the next day morning in the paper. So we have moved a long way from there. Everything is real time, right? Thanks to SEBI rules of disclosure, all listed companies within minutes have to disclose information. So simple stuff like accounts and whatever they do, board decisions, one heck of a lot of information is available in the public domain. So anyone who is discerning is not looking to media anymore for news, as in information. Right? So when that is eliminated, thanks to insider trading laws, the amount of news breaks that a journalist can do also are very limited. Because it's all coming out automatically. What happens is it's humanly impossible for you to go and track, say, 6,000 companies on the BSE or 2,000 on the NSE, whatever number. So you wait for the newspaper to come because you get curated stuff. Important stuff is highlighted for you on the front page. That's why you look at it. But it's not that you're dependent. You can always do a little algo to get the stocks that you follow, and that information about it is real time. These tools are available. So finally, the last bit that you don't have is investigation, right? So investigation, there are two things now. One is whistleblowing, okay? What information comes out. So there are two kinds. So there are genuine whistleblowers. There are people with motives.
Hmm.
Right? Now, it's my view that everybody who wants to do a lot of work on digging up some dirt, and this is from time immemorial, okay, it's
Hmm.
either competition or someone with a vested interest.
Hmm.
Right? It can be someone inside who's been sacked, or very rarely someone who doesn't like what's happening
Hmm.
and is agitated about it. Usually, that person who doesn't like what is happening has raised it with the management and got thrown out.
Hmm. Hmm.
So the information is genuine. The question is, what do you do about how it comes out? Who do you believe?
Hmm.
So, frankly, these are calls that people have to make. Very rarely is it in mainstream media,
Hmm.
for the simple reason that today mainstream media survives only because of advertising revenue, right? So, advertising includes government. So, they will not even write against government because government is the biggest advertiser. Then, corporate houses are the biggest advertisers. The third most vicious thing that is happening is what is called sponsored posts and native advertising. Okay.
Hmm.
So when there is an ad budget, that budget includes things like what views. So if there's a panel discussion, who will be in the panel discussion is depends on the advertising, annual advertising budget of a certain company and the government.
Hmm.
Okay. If Tamil Nadu government's budget is so and so with X paper, they will get that many write-ups. They will nominate that this edit page article will be written. So you can't depend on views that come in mainstream media anymore because they are not honest enough to call it a sponsored post. And that's most, I mean, you put someone on a panel knowing what the views are, or sometimes entire panel discussions. So for instance, okay, just as an example, the government is going to do something on cryptocurrencies, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So there will be media which will do a whole panel discussion on cryptocurrencies where the questions will be decided by the advertiser. The panelist will be decided by the advertiser because you want to create the sense that this is the overwhelming public view, which it is not, right? And this is a very, very difficult thing to live through. Now, the flip side of it is, yes, there are maybe 10% of the people who are saying, no matter what, I will speak out and I'll tell the truth and I will write it and I will not get influenced. Does that work for them? No, because the same machine that buys their viewpoint in a mainstream media has digital media agencies and influencers to kill the credibility of those who are credible.
Right.
Even those who would otherwise be credible are constantly having to face attacks from people because it's in no one's interest in the corporate world or among intermediaries for anybody to have credibility. They want everybody's credibility destroyed. So, in that situation, how do you decide? I have no answers, honestly. Okay. I will make a judgment call. It'll be my personal call about whom to follow, whom to believe, but each one will have to do that.
Awesome. I have few more pointers, ma'am. One is related to corporate governance. Now, in India, I mean, generally it is said that overall quality of corporate governance beyond those probably initial top stocks is not as that great. So you think it has improved in last over a period of time, or you think we are still there, not very sure what companies are doing, and minority shareholders still remains a minority in a company?
I think minority shareholders remain a minority. At one level, things have improved by sheer pressure of how many checkboxes and disclosures you have to make. Okay. But I mean, look at the big ones, I mean, you look at the kind of crippling losses and the silence. I mean, you'll see behind me a book called Absolute Power, which was
Yeah.
released last year, which is on the National Stock Exchange. I mean, I was one of the biggest fans of the NSE when it started because I thought it was necessary. I was constantly writing against the Bombay Stock Exchange because it was like a, brokers club and a den of thieves. And, I was blacklisted by the BSE. I was that much of a fan of the NSE. And today I have to write about the goings on there, where the only thing that mattered is creating this froth. And to my horror, this is a 2015 thing. Nothing has changed. There's no punishments. They are going to go public. There is no action by the regulator. And number of investors are increasing. Nobody's asking for it. So NSE is not the only example. Look at ILFS. ILFS was so larger than life In fact, I call ILFS a IAS officer scam. ILFS grew and became what it was for once, not a political scam. It is so, somebody in the IAS tells me that the internal joke among them was that, like you have a Tripura cadre and a Kerala cadre and a Maharashtra cadre, there was a ILFS cadre.
Oh,
They had that many people on their payroll, their children were getting jobs, their in-laws were getting contracts, they were getting scholarships abroad. I mean, they have hell to pay. Has this government done anything about it? No. In fact, people who were close to them are part of it. Then look at Diwan Housing, look at HDIL, okay? Look at what's happening with Shrey now. I mean, these are new. Karvi, okay? Karvi was until Zerodha the largest broker. Look at the number of intermediary companies, okay? Has SEBI taken any action against any of the other Karvi companies? We have asked them, no answer. They don't answer us. Who will they answer, right? But others don't even ask. Okay, we ask, we don't get answers. My point is that if you look at these headline ones, which numbers are big, then you look at the bad debts, right? The public sector banks are into strike and protest as we speak. Look at the numbers they're putting out. These are corporate defaults. These are not farmer loans. We abuse farmers so much. These are corporate loan defaults, right? And large ones, 100 crore and above. So, simple answer, has governance changed? If governance had improved, you wouldn't have had all this.
True, ma'am. Ma'am, you talked about NSE and the past issues with NSE, and I should talk about algo trading. I will not get into those issues, but I should talk about why algo trading became so big in India because of the NSE co-location and the whole structure of the co-location, which held fastest access to data, etc. And now retail investor wants to use that algo trading. And recently NSE came out with a white paper giving a clear-cut instruction to the broker community that it's your responsibility. You can't shy away from that responsibility. So do you have any view about this, that whether algo trading, which is a new norm globally, and India would need algo trading as well, which is now also a kind of a club of algo traders in India who have done very good in last 10 years. Do you think retail participation in algo is healthy and the white paper should be revisited?
So two things. One is that, we used to say when we wrote this book, we had said there were two markets. Okay. One is the big institutional market with their big servers sitting inside the exchange, whose data comes much faster than you. So by the time you get your next, tick of the data, they have managed to trade 100 times over using their algos, right? So this is a market that we imported in 2010 without even permission. That's what we've written in the book, from abroad, because it's happening around the world. NSE managed to persuade the then SEBI chairman, quietly started it, no questions asked. Some people made a noise. It wasn't even fair. BSE was not allowed equal access, but it's all documented in the book. Right? We lived with it because we said, while it's unfair, it doesn't affect the retail market, doesn't affect ordinary people whose savings and youngsters who have put their money for the first time are not going to get wiped out, right? With small families, children, their education to worry about. So retail algos is the new thing. I mean, I think we had a role to play in the regulation coming into retail algos. In July, I wrote a column saying, why is SEBI reluctant to regulate retail algos? Because it had been so widespread. As you said, social media, WhatsApp, Telegram groups, they were massively advertising. They promise high returns. Every large brokerage had got into it. And at that time, when I checked informally with someone with SEBI, they told us, we have discussed it internally and decided it does not need regulation. But after I wrote the column and I put out data, they changed their mind. They began to call. And now the beauty is that in this industry, it is the algo writers who began to write to SEBI saying, do you have any idea what's going on? Because an algorithm is written by an expert. He can write a vicious algorithm also. Okay. He can write an algorithm to manipulate stocks. He can write an algorithm that creates dumping by tweaking it, because you don't know what's happening behind. You're just using the front end. So you get an upgrade, you will upgrade it, you won't know what is happening. How can you have this algo with zero regulation if for the institutional market, every single algo is cleared by the exchange after verifying it.
Hmm.
I mean, it's ridiculous that SEBI was doing nothing.
Hmm.
So these people began to write for fear that one fine day when there is a problem, when lots of people lose money, when 5 members of parliament scream over there, you will ban all retail algos and people will be out of business. So they began to say, look, you have to separate the good guys from the bad guys.
Hmm.
You will have to have a framework, which is why, and I'm privy to some of these discussions that happen, they have now come up with a framework. There is intense lobbying going on, which is reflected in media and media edits to say dilute this, and whether it should be linked to APIs or you should look at individual algos. It's often, I mean, you can see the vested interest very clearly about where it is coming from. And I keep saying this is what we have to guard against, because the retail voice is never going to be held when this decision is going to be made, because everybody, I used to keep saying, primary market committee, if you look at it around the table, there's a regulator, there are the exchanges, now 4 or 5 of them, there are all the intermediaries, and the Institute of Chartered Accountants, a couple of academics who will be on boards of 5 other regulated entities earning crores of rupees. Who is there to speak for the investor? Earlier, when SEBI was formed, for the first 15 years, they had to have 2 NGOs. Okay. For the last 15 years, they have eliminated that. They used to meet investor organizations. It doesn't happen anymore. Everybody on that table who is deciding is an intermediary with a vested interest. So should it be regulated? Yes, I think it should be regulated. In fact, I think Bloomberg has an article about how you can have a negative nudge, how you're pushing people to do things, how you can, play mind games to make a person feel, I haven't traded 10 times today, there's a problem, right? So it is the regulator's job to be aware of all this. But like I said, first, let's not look at the US for 2 reasons, okay? Not just we are getting a lot of bad things from the US. I have a whole list of things that we import from the US, which are downright bad for our health, wealth, including on health, food that we eat, not just limited to markets, okay? We import those because it's a large country and it's a superpower. But more importantly, at least they have a functioning legal system where they can get exemplary damages. So once in a while, a tobacco company or somebody selling something carcinogenic will get so badly hit that they have to clean up. And they clean up. In India, it goes on for 25 years. Look at whether it is Sahara, look at PACL. They just gamed the legal system, raised 50,000 crore. I mean, look at Sahara, 65,000 crore after a SEBI case in 2012, path-breaking judgment. After that, in the name of cooperative, by the very word cooperative society is for small funds that you collect, right? When they collected more than 70,000 crore, and today they are not able to pay them through 4 cooperatives around the country. Till today, nobody has asked, how did you do it? Where is the money? Every member of parliament across political parties is, in line with this corporate house. If you want to call it a corporate house, I don't know how cooperative can be corporate, but no questions asked. This is the country we live in, which is why it makes it more dangerous to just borrow something from the US.
True. Okay, ma'am, I'll move to the next point, which you recently raised also. And, I also recorded a video, just to communicate my way to people that that gray area of the market. Harshad Mehta was one gray area of the market, and he did use the market for his benefits. And we all have seen that through lovely series. But there is a gray area in the market called FIIs. And who is behind the FIIs is definitely a big question, which does come, especially for a few FIIs who are investing in different kind of companies. I don't want to name specifically here, but do you think that domain needs a serious audit?
Absolutely. In fact, I keep saying that, after Ketan Parikh's scam, which happened in 2008, 9 years later, one of the things that's happened is that you don't have one figure who is pushing the market, because everything is done from abroad. Everything is done from 4 or 5 layers. Okay. So again, like I said, the last time there was some serious investigation into all of this was post Ketan Parekh, when you had those overseas corporate bodies set up with $1 capital in tax havens. They tried to stop those. There was no serious investigation into that scam at all. And then, under public pressure, they said 3 layers of disclosures have to be made. But so long as you have Indian law firms that are helping people to create, they very proudly say, we help to slice and dice things so that you have multiple layers. And in fact, I remember I was writing about DSQ software. All those articles are there in Indian Express. And I discovered the horror of how they have, like, say, 6 companies. Okay, so it'll be ABC PLC, ABC something else. So same set of companies in Singapore, same set in Mauritius, same in Cayman Islands, so that money can be moved through those companies in different tax havens before it comes. The name is the same. They call them mirror companies. Okay. And the only thing that is missing is that little suffix, whether it's limited or it's PLC or whatever else. And it is impossible for you to say which company is doing what from which part, because you're remembering the first names. The other thing that they do, which is a very well-known trick, is set up shell companies, make use of them, change their names, then quickly shut them down, set up new companies. You have large legal firms that are doing this non-stop activity, and you have a powerful new law under this government after 2014. I mean, I would like to ask them, what have you done? I mean, why is it that we know so much about what's going on, but you are blank with all the powers, and you haven't? I mean, you had the Paradise Papers, you had the Panama Papers, which have even traced this. I mean, if you look at those charts, look at how well they have traced cutting across globally through these islands. What is the action so far? So like I was saying about SEBI, if you do something 10 years later, that's no meaning. You're fooling around in the market now. After the market has collapsed, if it does, 5 years down the line, if you're going to come up with something and say, wo aapne tabhi kiya tha, we are acting on it, it has zero meaning.
True. So, ma'am, before we close this, I don't want to close it, but I know you have given me limited time, so I will have to close this one. Your do's and don'ts for retail investors, because they really need a strong guidance, right guidance from you.
Okay, simple. One is that it's not easy to invest in the market. It is not easy to invest without knowledge. Okay, so if anyone tells you it's very easy, aapko tip milega and you're going to buy or sell, or there are trusted people who are interested in making you wealthy and they're always going to give you the right thing, it does not happen. Then you're in a fool's paradise. So first thing is that you have to do your own work. Okay, and as I, literally going to summarize what I said at different times, that it's a difficult time. You have to pass through what is happening on social media, what to take out of what you read in the newspaper. You can't read it as gospel truth because you don't even know whether it's a sponsored item or somebody's real opinion. You don't know how many big names also are actually paid by somebody, right? So it's a difficult time. You have to do a lot more work. So first you have to work. Second is you have to do a lot more work in being discerning, following the right people. And I think the biggest lesson is to control your greed. Nobody is going to be a multi-billionaire overnight. Everybody has gone through ups and downs. You can speculate with a set of money that you're ready to lose, which you keep aside. But anyone with sense will have 2 books. One is your investments for the long term, which is your slow building of wealth. Okay, where you look at really good investments and stay for the long term. Yes, you may want to dabble, you may want to do derivatives, keep aside some amount of money, you turn lucky, keep moving part of it to your long-term investment and dabble in what you can lose. Okay, and there's no shortcuts. You just have to spend your own time learning.
Awesome, ma'am. Awesome. Ma'am, I must say that you are the most realistic person I have met, and you really inspire us to be live in the reality and talk real stuff. So thank you so much for doing what you are doing for our country, and I hope we are able to save few gullible ones from this it's not an easy market ecosystem which is out there. So I face all the social media try to make it very simple, but it is not so easy. So thank you so much for your lovely content. I am a regular follower of your content in your YouTube channel. So please continue making them and keep enlightening us with important subject matters. Thank you so much for recording
Thank
this
you
one.
so much. It's been a pleasure and it's good meeting you and it's a lovely chat.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Bye.